In today's video, we uncover the chilling mystery of a young woman who went to bed one night and was never seen again. One college student didn't come home from a friend's house in the middle of the night, while everyone else was sleeping in the room next door. Strange things were not seen or heard, but she wasn't there in the morning. The police were called right away, and the case became the city's most talked about story right away. After following thousands of leads, detectives finally found the shocking truth that shook the whole country to its core. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from? Whether you're watching from home, work, or on the go, drop your city or country in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into true crime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Now, let's get back into the case. Brianna Dennison was born in Reno, Nevada on March 29, 1988. It was where she grew up with her parents and younger brother. When she was 6, her father suddenly died. The death hurt the whole family, but it made Brianna love her mom even more, and her mom did everything she could to help. Her family also liked to go on trips. Brianna saw a lot of Europe. She went to Japan and even spent a year as a student exchange student in Italy. She went to California to attend Santa Barbara City College after finishing high school. She chose to become a child psychologist because she had always wanted to work with kids. Not long after moving to Santa Barbara, she made friends right away and began dating a guy. Brainy, then 19, took a break from college in the winter of 2008 and went back to Reno to spend time with her family and friends. That Friday, January 18th, she went to her best friend's house with another friend to spend the weekend with them. They planned their days so that they could ski during the day and go to shows and nightclubs at night. Bryn was going to see one of her favorite bands perform live on January 19th, but she got sick and couldn't go. Brianna decided she didn't want to miss it because her mom told her to go anyway. After a few hours, she left the show early to go back to her friend's house and try to keep her cold from getting worse. Even though the house wasn't far away, she didn't want to walk because it was cold. When she saw a car leave the parking lot, she flagged it down and asked the driver to take her somewhere. He agreed, and she got home. She then began to wait for her friends to return from the show. Around 3:30 in the morning, they showed up. Before going to bed, the girls talked for a while. Brianna texted her boyfriend around 4:30 and then went to sleep. Brianna fell asleep on the couch in the kitchen while her friends slept in the next room. Brianna was not there when they woke up at 9 a.m. and began making breakfast. They didn't think much of it at first because they thought she had just moved into the bedroom because the door was shut. After about 40 minutes, one of them knocked on her door to wake her up for breakfast, but no one answered. She knocked again, but nothing happened. When she finally opened the door, the room was empty. The friends looked through the whole house and quickly found that Brianna wasn't there, but her phone, purse, clothes, and even shoes were still there. It all felt wrong. They couldn't think of a reason she would go outside in just a t-shirt since it was very cold. When they called her mom, she had no idea where her daughter was. She ran over right away. Between then and now, the friends saw something very scary. A few small red marks that looked a lot like blood were found on Brianna's pillow where she had been sleeping. Her friends were so scared that they called the cops, who arrived almost right away. There were no signs of a fight inside the house, but a few things stood out right away. Brianna's blanket that she had been sleeping under was lying a few feet away from the couch, and the toy bear that she had been using as an extra pillow was gone. The friends told the cops they never locked the front door, which was right in front of where Brianna had been sleeping. There were also no signs of forced entry. From the very beginning, police began to lean towards the idea that she had been taken. They still couldn't figure out how someone could have taken her without waking up the two girls sleeping in the next room. It didn't make sense for her to walk out into the cold in just a t-shirt. Based on the pillow Brianna had been using, forensic experts quickly came up with the most likely reason for what happened. First, they were sure that her blood was on it. Then, they came to the conclusion that the killer had probably slammed her face into the pillow hard enough to keep her from crying. The crime lab also swabbed the front door handle and found DNA from a man that wasn't in the system that was not known. Since there were no more useful hints inside the house, police searched the whole city. Also, they started going door to door in the neighborhood and asking guys to give DNA samples on their own. At the same time, detectives looked through Brianna's phone and found a bunch of texts from her boyfriend. He sent her a bunch of mean messages the night she disappeared, and her friends said they were about to break up. He was a suspect for a short time until investigators found out he was in another state at the time and couldn't have been involved in the kidnapping. Brianna's absence was the biggest news story in the city from the very beginning, and it quickly spread across the whole country. Her picture was on a lot of billboards, and the story was always being covered in the local news. The cops got about 3,000 DNA samples from people in the area, but that much work was too much for the city's crime lab to handle. The government asked the people for help and quickly raised $150,000 to pay for more tests. In the end, experts were able to look at all of the samples, but none of them matched the DNA of the person thought to be the kidnapper. As soon as the FBI joined the case, they set out to find the suspect. First, police looked into the man who had driven Brianna home that night because they thought he might have come back later to take her. When the news said that police wanted to talk to him, the man came forward, gave a DNA sample, and gave a good reason for not being responsible. This took him off the police's list of suspects. A man who lived across the street from Brianna's friend's house gave them another tip. He was sitting in his living room and told the cops that he hadn't slept that night. At about 5 a.m., he saw a shadow move in front of his window and then heard someone trying to open his front door. For a while, nothing worked to stop the noise, but at first, he didn't think much of it. He thought it was probably just a drunk person who thought his house was theirs. The search activities got bigger every day. People volunteered to join the cops. Drones flew over the area, and search dogs were used by police to look in hard-to-reach places like fields, woods, and drainage ditches. But none of it got us anywhere. Detectives didn't think this was the suspect's first crime based on the information they had. As they looked into Reno's unexplained crimes, they quickly found two that caught their attention. Just a few months before Brianna went missing, in November 2007, an unknown man beat a college student who was 21 years old. He came up to her in the parking lot, knocked her down, pulled out a gun, and beat her up. She screamed until she could barely breathe, even though he told her to be quiet. It looked like that scared him, so he ran away and dropped a pack of condoms along the way. After a month, there was another attack. This time, the victim was a student who was 22 years old and standing outside her house when a man came up behind her and squeezed her mouth and nose, knocking her out. The truck cab is where she woke up. After a few minutes, the driver pulled over and raped her while telling her not to look at him the whole time. He drove her back to her house and told her not to turn around as she walked to the door. She called the cops right away and gave them some information. The man was white, big, and had brown arms. She also talked about his pickup truck and added a scary detail. There was a child's shoe inside. There was one more scary link between the two strikes. The person who attacked both times took the victim's pants with him. Police took DNA samples from both women, and they were found to be identical. Now, the officers working on Brianna's case asked for a match to be made between the sample and the one from the door handle. This made their worst fear come true. They were dealing with a repeat predator who liked to prey on women. Sexual abuse. After hearing about this in the news, another kid spoke up. She told the police that someone had tried to break into her house one night by pulling on the front door handle so hard that it bent. However, the intruder was unable to enter. Police made a composite sketch and profile of the suspect based on information from the other two victims. The suspect was a guy of average height, between 28 and 40 years old, with a solid muscular build. Print and TV sites in the area were sent a picture of him, along with a public appeal for help identifying him. There was a lot of fear in Reno. They knew there was a serial killer working right next door, and thought it would only be a matter of time before he did it again. The sales of guns and pepper spray went through the roof, and women were too scared to stay home by themselves. Investigators weren't any closer to making an arrest or finding Brianna, even though the public was putting a lot of pressure on them. It became less likely that she was still living every day. Divers were sent to look for her body in a nearby river, and hundreds of people braved the cold to help. Also, more than 5,000 tips were sent to the police, but none of them helped them find Brianna. It went on for almost a month before someone called the cops. A worker was leaving for his lunch break on February 15th. In order to save time, he chose to go to the coffee shop by cutting through an empty lot. He saw an old Christmas tree lying in a ditch and a pair of socks sticking out from behind it as he walked. As he got closer, he saw what looked like a person. He first thought someone had dumped a mannequin, but it didn't take him long to figure out it was a dead body. He called the cops right away. The body parts were sent to a medical examiner so that the name of the person and the cause of death could be confirmed. 2 sets of women's pants were lying next to the body. The victim was naked except for socks. The doctor said for sure that it was Brianna. She was strangled to death, and marks on her neck showed that her killer had used knickers to do it. The doctor said Brianna was killed in the house, and her body was later taken away. In other words, she had been dead since the day she went missing. 1 pair of pants belonged to Brianna's friend, who hadn't even known they were stolen. The other pair, on the other hand, wasn't hers. Police think the killer left them at the spot on purpose to tease them. Also, Brianna had been sexually abused, and DNA from a man was found on her body. Like we thought it would, it matched the samples from the 2 earlier attacks and the one that was on the doorknob. Everyone in the city felt sick when they heard that Brianna's body had been found. A lot of people were keeping an eye on the case because they thought she might still be alive. During the weeks that followed, police kept looking for the killer. They tried following every tip, but none of them led anywhere. A few weeks later, they chose to tell the public more about what happened and said that the killer seemed to collect his victim's pants. Investigators hoped that a family member or friend might have seen something fishy, but no useful information came in. After that, the investigation pretty much stopped, even though a lot of police were still working on it. As the weeks changed into months, they were having a hard time believing that the killer had gotten away with it. But on November 1st, almost a year after the murder, everything changed. A call came in from someone who didn't want to be named. Someone said that a friend of hers found women's knickers in her boyfriend's pickup truck a while ago. When she asked him about it, his explanation sounded very fishy. There was more. This man sold his truck and left town soon after Brianna was killed. That man was James Bila, who is 27 years old, and the cops quickly found him. James used to be in the Marines and had a lot of training in martial arts. He had worked on many building projects near the university, in the area where Brianna's friend lived, so he knew the area well. At the time of Brianna's murder, he was taking on work as a builder. As the officers dug deeper, they found out that James had a violent streak. Someone he used to date told them he hit her a lot and once almost killed someone with a knife. He also broke a dog's leg for no reason one time. Police had never taken James's DNA or charged him with anything, even after all that. As soon as the police found out he had moved back to Reno, they kept an eye on him 24 hours a day. They called him too and said they wanted to talk. James agreed to meet, but he didn't even ask what the meeting was for. Police asked him where he was the night Brianna was killed when they talked to him the next day. James said he was at his girlfriend's house, but when they asked for a DNA sample, he flatly refused. Just then, the cops went to see his ex-girlfriend, and she told them his story was a lie. That night, he wasn't with her. They also found out that James was married to this woman and had a 4-year-old boy together. When the police asked the boy's mother if they could get a DNA sample from him, she said yes. The killer's DNA was almost exactly the same as the child's, which meant that the crimes were likely committed by someone in the boy's close family. With all of this proof in hand, the officers went back to James, but this time it was to arrest him. A lot of charges were brought against him because his DNA had been found in 3 different cases. He still wouldn't accept he was guilty. James was put in jail until his hearing while the police worked to build their case. They learned from James's father that he had a long past of drug abuse, which was a big reason why he was kicked out of the Marines. Detectives also found his old van. Fibers from the seat covers were tested and found to be an exact match to fibers found on the clothes of another student who had been taken and driven home. His old boss also had something to say. He said James quit his job the same day Brianna's body was found and went to live in another state. When the trial started, James' lawyer tried to say that the cases were unrelated and that each crime had its own signature. But those claims didn't hold much weight because the prosecution had a lot of proof linking James to all of them. James kept laughing and even smirking during the trial, which didn't help his case. In late May 2010, just over 2 years after Brianna's murder, the jury found him guilty on all counts. The court then had to decide what to do with him, and the death penalty was an option. James's lawyer worked hard to keep him from getting the harshest sentence. He told the judge about his client's troubled childhood and how his alcoholic father would beat him often. He also talked about how well James had behaved in jail. The judge didn't care about any of that, so James was given the death penalty. Just a few months later, he got 4 more life terms for different charges. This means that he will never be free, even if his execution never happens, which is very possible. Over the next few years, James's lawyer tried more than once to get the sentence thrown out, but each time the state Supreme Court supported the death penalty. Because of this, James is still in jail, and there is no set date for his execution. Brianna's family pushed for a new law in Nevada that would require police to get DNA from anyone arrested for a violent crime after he was caught. Some people think that if there had been such a rule earlier, James would have been caught after his first attack on a student, and Brianna might not have died. It's too bad that her death wasn't the last blow to the family. It's been 10 years since she was killed, and her 19-year-old cousin has still not been found. Her folks were shocked when she told them she was leaving for another state with a new boyfriend. She then stopped answering her phone. Her family is scared that something bad happened to her and still hopes she'll come home one day. Thank you for watching this heartbreaking story. Don't forget to leave your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel for more cases. Until next time, stay safe.